cycling and in the UK, and it's unnecessary. So what we're trying to do is highlight some of the awesome women who are already doing great things in cycling, sharing tips, sharing advice, breaking down perceived barriers, and generally encouraging more women to get on bikes so we can get that gender gap a little bit more even. It's all put on by Cycling UK, which is the national charity for cycling. So they're dedicated to making cycling safer, easier, more enjoyable, and basically making the UK a cycling nation. If you'd like to know more about Cycling UK, check out their website. If you want to support what we're doing, we can take donations, or you can become a member. So if you become a member, your funding helps us continue with our great work, but it also gives you loads of great stuff too. So you can get insurance, you can get membership discounts on loads and loads of products, you get advice and topics sent straight to your inbox. So why don't you think about joining us? Look, there you go, little link below, and it's all for charity. Good work. Cool. So let's crack on with today's session. We've got an amazing lineup. Some of the most inspirational women in the cycling world. They're all women that I follow personally because I think they're wicked. And what I don't want from this panel is for it to be intimidating. So once you start to get to know these people, you'll realise that despite their incredible achievements and the things that they've done, everybody can start going solo. So that's the name of today's title, and it's about how to ride by yourself. So if you're a bit nervous about it, or you don't want to know, you want to know more about how to go further afield by yourself, today is the session for you. So let's get started. I'm going to invite on first and foremost a good friend of mine. Hey Wiesia. And just need to unmute there, and you're Wiesia. I should know by now. I do know, but I like getting it wrong. Why don't you just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, what sort of cycling you do, especially around cycling by yourself?
Yeah, so I've been cycling for, I think, about 14 years now. I started off when they first brought the Cycle to Work scheme in. I'm from Bristol originally, so the traffic was horrendous. So it used to take me over an hour to drive from north to south Bristol because the transport was so bad, so you couldn't take a bus. So my boss was really, really into cycling, so he dragged me around all the shops and made me buy my first ever bike. And luckily enough, I went to Muddock, and they weren't happy just to get me a hybrid. They got me a road bike. I was all clipped in and kind of the full shebang. So I kind of like fell into it like that. Then from there, I moved to London and joined Twickenham Cycling Club. Just to meet people really, and just to get to know people in London. Was dragged into road cycling. I think was pushed back onto when I'd be drop off kind of a road ride. I get a gentle hand to push me back on, and it was just a really, really, really lovely scene, and they kind of really welcomed me to it. Fast forward that a bit, I ended up racing somehow. I think my first ever road race was with Danny King, Laura Trott and that lot, and I was on my little 400-pound bike with like a triple thing. I just like rocked up and didn't really understand what these girls were and all these rollers and everything. But I kind of fallen into the cycling industry and kind of really embraced it. I've been super lucky to have such a supportive bunch around me. Move forward a bit more. I then met you, Anna, through the Mule Bar Girls, and kind of we worked tireless really to make cycling less intimidating to women. We used to take track sessions down at Herne Hill. I think when we started, we used to turn up and no one would be there, I think.
Yeah. But we knew, like, if one person turns up, we're happy.
Yeah, but we knew that it's super important to be there and be there every week. And then slowly, and kind of a lot of promoting, we managed to get the sessions up from kind of 1 or 2 people turning. I think still going today, and I think there's almost like 30 or 40 women racing there now. So yeah, and I ended up working in the cycling industry. So I've been working in there for I think 11 years now, working for a PR firm. And then kind of more recently, I kind of I think my story of my life is falling into things. I fell into
metaphorically and realistically. I don't talk about that. I fell off my bike yesterday.
So I fell into bike packing. It was actually Emily who inspired me to do it and give it a go. I thought she was like amazing. And it's quite male dominated. And I've always wanted to ride across Europe. I always thought, I don't know how to do it. And I'm not very good at I just found it too intimidating to do it on my own. So when Emily did it, I was like, I can do this. So just entered the transcontinental and just had a go and eventually got there.
We'll come more onto that story a bit later on, because it's super impressive, and that's like the main topic of today's session, is like those sort of alone adventures and going solo. And I know it is about being on your own, but I do have to say the cycling community is incredible, and it just goes to show that your story, having all those people around you, has been a huge help on getting you into cycling, and then being able to go alone. So maybe sometimes at the beginning leaning on people before you start your own solo adventures. But as you've mentioned her name already, and she is a hero, she's inspired so many people. We've even got a bit of a fan club already for Emily on the screen right now. Nadia says that she loves you, Emily. This is nice. So thanks for
Hi Nadia, I love you too.
For those who maybe don't know you, or wondering why everyone's singing and dancing because you're here, why are you here? What's your role in solo cycling?
I do a lot of it. So I've been at it for, I think, a similar length of time to V. Actually, I got into cycling in about 2006, so that's 14 years ago now. And I first started because I just left university and moved to London, and I got it into my head that I wanted to cycle to work. I was not the way I am back in those days. You wouldn't recognise me. I was this slightly chubby, nerdy, long-haired person in long skirts who worked in offices, and I couldn't believe people were cycling in London. I didn't even think it was possible, but I also somehow wanted to do it. So I got a bike off Gumtree, and one of my scariest rides ever was the first time I commuted from Brixton up to Regent's Park. I left myself 2.5 hours. I literally could not sleep the night before. I just couldn't switch off. I was so worried, and I kept getting up and just looking at the map, and it was fine. I got there. And then within a couple of weeks, I had fallen in love with it. And then it just kind of shot. Like, I was into big rides really quickly. I fell in with the right crowd and ended up doing 100-mile rides. I eventually became a bike messenger and did that for quite a long time, which is not exactly like endurance cycling, but it gets you very ready for it. And
you're
doing
on the bike
that
all day.
I suppose, yeah, in a way, it's an endurance sport in all sorts of different ways. So once I'd done that for a few years, I was kind of then just acclimatized to cycling all day, every day as what I did. And that's sort of a difficult thing to let go of. So I then went and did some very long distance tours, just thinking, right, I need to keep cycling, but maybe go a bit further. And then from there, it's like the last 5 years have been quite interesting. At this time 5 years ago, I started to meet other women who were into long distance cycling. And it's really strange to think that 5 years ago, I felt like I was the only one who did this stuff. Just, this was my weird little habit. And everyone looked at me like I was a weirdo. And to meet other weirdos was just wonderful. And now there are so many.
They're all just hidden there under rocks in the first place. I just didn't know.
Under rocks and up mountains and in petrol station forecourts at about 2 a.m. So now I do. Well, I've done some ultra distance races. I did the Transcontinental a few times, did a couple of others, and I've done various tours. I've done some deep winter tours, and I just really like riding my bike a really long distance. I currently, actually, my summer job, except for this year, is leading Le Loop, which is a charity ride that goes around the entire Tour de France route, which I am still quite impressed by. I mean, I'm scared of it, and there are loads of amateur cyclists who manage to do it, and every year I'm astounded that we manage it. But that is currently one of the big joys of my life. It'll be back next year.
Yeah, and you've fallen into it because you love it. And again, a little bit of a community influence there. You mentioned that it's like through the help of other people that help you discover what you want to do by yourself. It's interesting, that, isn't it? It's not just a solo thought process, even if the actual cycling you end up doing can often be on your own. I love this. Somebody's written in the comments here, yay, I'm a cycling weirdo too. So let's run with this. Anyone else who's in the cycling weirdo camp and maybe who loves just riding their bike all day by themselves, give us a shout in the comments here. And I've also heard from Craigie Lee, and she's from Scone, but I feel like we're going to enter into the Scone debate. Not sure which is the best way to pronounce that. But all the audience, please do put your comments in. All the weirdos, get those comments in right now. Some more weirdos. Let's invite them onto the screen. Catherine Moore, do you want to join us?
Hiya, how's it going?
Yeah, do you identify with that? Do you feel like you're a cycling weirdo?
100%. And I'm another one in the
category.
I'm another one in the Inspired by Emily category, just to make her blush a little bit more.
This is actually just a little fan club.
Yeah.
Emily fan club. So your cycling weirdo tendencies, how did you develop and nurture them to become the solo cyclist you are today? Sharing your experiences with us.
Well, I'm going to put in the caveat that I'm not so much of a solo cyclist anymore, but I have done a fair bit in the past. I got into cycling after university when I moved 4 hours across the country from everything I knew in the southwest up towards Peterborough. And I got really into cycling and then learnt when I moved back to Bristol that actually it's very flat over there and Bristol is not. So I started off as a road cyclist, got really, really hooked and left my quite prosperous career in agriculture behind to join the bright lights of the bike industry, which I've been working in for about 3 or 4 years now, and absolutely love. I sort of got this fascination with the 100 miler thing, which is where the whole solo riding thing came in, I think. A friend of mine, Jack Peterson, or Mad Jack, as a lot of us know him, he was putting on a challenge where you could see how many century rides you could do, imperial centuries, that is, so 100 miles in a year. And if you did 20, then you'd get a certificate. And that is literally all the motivation I needed. So yeah, did that. And then got into touring. And, you know, I'm a writer now, really, in the bike industry. And a lot of the topics are, you know, what's the best bike for bike packing and all the best kit and stuff. And the answer is it's what you've already got. So I started touring on my race bike, just with like a lightweight Alpkit koala bag thing on the back, credit card touring, hopping between Airbnbs. My first tour was around the south coast of the UK and then the north coast of France for the 2016 Tour de France prologue in Normandy, which was fantastic. And then, yeah, I didn't really realise that there were many other people that enjoyed this sort of thing until I went to an evening with Lee Craigie, Emily Chappell, and I think Ricky Cotter was there as well, she is the definition of cycling weirdo in a wonderful way. And absolutely inspired. I think Emily said something like, you know, if I can do it, then all of you can. And of course, that's very humble and an exaggeration probably. But since then, there's just been this massive explosion of women in long distance, Audax, road, off-road. And that's kind of where I've been drawn to since, is the off-road stuff. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for that introduction. And we've got Weirdo Emily, Mad Mark, or whatever it was. This is definitely the gang to be in, isn't it? And finally, let's sing her onto the screen. We've got Laugh, Kookaburra, Laugh, Katie Butters on the screen. So, who are you?
My name's Katie. Yeah, I started cycling like 5 years ago. I was traveling in Australia. A friend was really into cycling. He was just like, maybe you should get a bike and travel around on your bike. So I basically got rid of, when I went traveling, I was like, I had hair extensions. I was like complete opposite to what I am now. But I had all this stuff with me. I had all these clothes. I had like 30 kilos of luggage. And I was like, right, if I want to get a bike, I need to get rid of all that. I can't carry both. So I got rid of all that. And then had the bike and then just travel around on the bike. So, but I wasn't, I was like 35 kilos heavier, so I found it a lot harder. I wasn't like naturally a good cyclist. I struggled up like any hill. I was scared of loads of descents. But slowly, gradually, I lost weight, got more confident, and then just did loads more long distance stuff, really. But again, another one in the Emily fan club. Like honestly, it sounds really like cringy, but like literally it made me like a bit teary because I was like, oh my god, this is like incredible. Like I'd never met anyone like doing that stuff and talking about it in such like a doable way, I guess. Because I thought when people doing all these kind of long distances that it didn't, not necessarily that it was easy, but you just kind of think, oh, I just find everything hard. But when you hear like actually how hard it is and how they go through that, you're like, oh, it is meant to be hard. And I guess I'm just the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just good to know that, I think.
And since then, you've gone on, I think, to inspire a lot of people as well. You've got quite a successful YouTube channel that people watch. Do you feel like a bit of a responsibility to pass down the chain? You know, when you got inspired, how can you then do that to other people?
Definitely,
like that.
definitely. Because I think when I first got into it, a lot of people did help me out and taught me things. I'm like, oh, I can just kind of pass on that knowledge, because there is a lot of stuff when you first get into it. Like, I genuinely, when I first bought my road bike, I bought it from the bike shop in Adelaide. And I was like, can you tell me how to use the gears? I literally had no idea. I was like, I don't know how the levers work. Like, I genuinely, like, no one knows this stuff. I thought I was an idiot.
I had to take it back to the shop and ask them how to change the gears, because
I didn't realize it feels so much better. You see, like, and this was the thing, the guy in the shop looked at me like, I think it was like 500. It wasn't a particularly expensive bike, but he looked at me and was like, you'll figure it out. And I was just like, oh, okay. Thanks.
No way.
Yeah, I wrote it back and I was a bit like, oh, I guess I will figure it out. But I did. But then now even like the simple questions is like, so I'm just trying to teach people, even from that very beginner stuff to kind of doing more longer distance things. So yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And anyone that wants to go and check out Katie's YouTube, I guess they can just pop in Katie Kookaburra.
Yes.
And they can find that out. Maybe Nick can pop in a link there. And I was going to read in some more of the audience comments. I love seeing these. We've got Emma Potter, who rode 300 miles with V one day.
That was my first 300. I was broken.
You would be. It's a really long way. And Sarah was a solo cycling weirdo, and then she got married and has a weirdo cycling wife. That's nice as well. And one more inspiring one here, that somebody, it's probably a bit similar about the gears and just being told, oh, you'll work it out, in sort of that psychological mindset. Mini Micro Adventures was told someone she was going to cycle 100 kilometers, and they told her she couldn't do it. So naturally, she's going to prove them wrong. Damn straight. And you will do it. I don't think any of us on this panel have any doubt, because everybody else has started from somewhere. What I want to do at the moment is to focus on some of the really more extreme solo stuff that you've done, but we're not going to spend too long on this, because really this discussion is to show how people can get into this. So it's like more about those beginner tips. But just so that everyone knows that you are the people that can talk the talk, you have all ticked off some pretty mad stuff. So we'll just go around in a clockwise rotation here. We'll start with you, V. What's the maddest, most crazy solo cycling thing you have ever done?
Probably be the transcontinental, which is
I like there's a probably in that.
It's what Emily inspired me to do when she won it back in, oh, you'd have to tell me the year, Emily. But it's a bike packing race. So you basically race your bike from Belgium, and it was to Greece then, and you solo, so you're self-supported. So you just need to get yourself from A to B via, I think it was 4 checkpoints. So you need to kind of bring all your own stuff, navigate your way, and get there. But you're not allowed any help. So you have to kind of like, any problems you have and everything like that, and you're not allowed to use transport. So you kind of have to it's a bit of a kind of a puzzle as well along the way. So yeah, I did that about 3 years ago. Was totally unprepared. I remember seeing you, Emily, at the start, and you were like, why have you got so much stuff?
No, I wasn't.
I had like things attached to things and stuff, but it was the best thing I ever did. I did it because I was quite scared. I get scared of things. So I thought I need to do this, kind of like just tackle my fear kind of head on. I wasn't fit I was fit going into it, but I hadn't really trained. Anna knows me. I like to burn the candle at every possible end. So I'd kind of been working really, really hard. Work was really, really hard at that point. I liked to go out and have a few drinks and stuff. And I think I went into it not having sat on the bike for like at least 4 weeks before. But I did it somehow with the support of Anna on the WhatsApp, I think. And I slowly, everything went wrong. Everything, like I had too much stuff. So my pannier, like had this like floating pannier rack that decided to break on the first day. So I had to like find a chippy with some kind of tape and stuff to attach it to. But it was amazing. Yeah, I got there eventually.
Yeah, and as your mate, I can vouch for that. You weren't really prepared going into it, but I think that made us all the more proud of you, because it comes back to, and again, anyone watching this is like, sometimes you can just put yourself out there and do something, even if you're not really what it says on the tin that, oh yeah, I've got it all prepared and it's all going to be perfect. You went into it with your beers and Snickers diet and was like, right, I'm going to get to the finish.
Yeah, I didn't even think I'd make it outside Belgium, to be honest. And I I don't think my parents did, because I think everyone went round and I decided to go over the Ardennes. So everyone was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But yeah, it was amazing. And I guess like that's quite extreme. But I mean, it starts with even just like a 10-mile ride, or, you know, find a like spot to go to. The commute's amazing.
We'll come on to that. We'll come on to the beginner tips, because that's what we're going to spend the majority of the time on. So, Emily, what would you say is your most wow solo adventure?
Well, do you mean apart from Brixton to Regent's Park?
Apart from that,
I think, well, so V's mentioned the Transcontinental, so that would be the obvious one. But I think actually the thing I was most scared of, and that was the most challenging and dangerous, basically, was when I cycled from Anchorage to Seattle in winter. So it was very, very, very cold. I camped at -40 a couple of times. It was very, very remote. There were parts I went through where one day I counted, I think it was 18 cars in 12 hours. So that is maybe a car an hour. So not many people. It was very just white and beautiful and bleak and quite, I don't know, intimidating. And I was genuinely frightened for the first few days, which is actually, I realised in hindsight, something I hadn't really felt before. I'd felt laziness and reluctance and ambivalence and all sorts of things. But it was genuine primal fear. And then as I did it...
Could you say?
Sorry?
Fear of what? What could you voice those fears?
Well, that was the interesting thing, because it was quite difficult to put my finger on it, because I did lots of talking to myself and said, well, no, listen, there's a road here, which means it goes somewhere. People use this road. Human beings exist here. People go to the North Pole. Like, this is not that bad. So I was kind of rationalizing it all. But I had this it was this real sense of anxiety and dread, and this sort of real aversion. Like, I just want to turn back. I want to turn back. I don't want to go on. I've got to stop. I've got to stop this. Get out of this situation. And I don't know what I was scared of. I think it was all the things people had told me about freezing to death and all of that. But it was the unknown as well. It was knowing that I was going into a situation that I had no experience of. I'd never felt what it was like at -40. So I genuinely didn't know what it would be like. I didn't know if it would hurt, or how it would hurt, or how I would deal with it, or if it would be something that I could deal with, or if it would be something that would either hurt me or kill me, or I would just have to bail. And I think for me, the things I am always the most frightened of, or the things I'm frightened of, are things I don't yet know about. Like, once you know about something, you can rationalize it. You can say, oh, I did that before, and this will be a bit like this. But when you genuinely don't know, like, what does -40 feel like? I mean, you don't know until you go there. So you don't know how you'll react. You can't prepare yourself, and you can't predict. I don't know. I think that was it.
Yeah, fear of the unknown. Yeah, understandable and common. So totally. Catherine, what about you?
I think you'd have to go back a few years, and it was that trip I did to France in 2016. I didn't have any close friends at the time that were into touring, and I'm a lot more sociable now. So I just took myself off for 10 days. And it was all going really swimmingly. So I started in Exeter with my parents, and you ride along the Jurassic coastline to Poole and get the ferry across to Cherbourg. And that's where the first few stages of the Tour de France were, which was incredible. But I got a bit carried away in Cherbourg after the second stage. And I mislaid my phone and my debit card, which made things quite interesting. So I had 200 euros that I'd drawn out, and a baguette, and all of my kit. So I basically hopped along the Normandy and Brittany coastline, staying in Airbnbs, asking to use their computers, booking the following night. I think I had a Garmin at the time, so I had the route still, which was lucky, although I did buy a paper map, and spent my 200 euros as I went along on either food or a tiny little GoPro thing, so I could still take photos. So that was amazing, because it forced me not to use my phone or be really connected to people, which was actually incredible. And I just loved every moment, apart from when I ran out of cash on the ferry, after the ferry back from Roscoff to Plymouth, and had to do the last leg across Dartmoor. And I had to beg with the people that have some food or anything just to see me over that last leg. And they were students at the University of Plymouth, and all they had left was a frozen garlic baguette, which I had to put in my jersey pocket and munch on Dartmoor, raw, cold, frozen garlic baguette. would have got me home.
It's
so,
like a garlic baguette ice lolly.
Yeah, it was horrific.
So no, this isn't going to be that. I was like, this could be the next thing, but you stopped me before I could even finish the sentence. Amazing. I guess it shows you how resourceful you can be as well.
You have to be, yeah.
You just had to, you were in that, suddenly in the thick of it, and you had to work it out for yourself. And over to you, Katie. What would you say is your standout epic, the most epic solo cycle you've done?
It's probably going to sound really pathetic in comparison to other women, but mine was like, it's called All Points North. It was like a 1,000k self-supported thing around like the north of England, but I didn't finish it, so it's not that impressive. But I was so scared. It was almost about, I was always scared about the route and like routing and things like that. And so I'd planned the route perfectly, but I'd gone up Great Dunfell, and it was like 50 mile an hour, like genuinely 50. I checked the forecast before, and it said it was 50 mile an hour winds up there, and I was like, nah, that can't be right. Gone up there, and it was horrific. I've never been so scared of a wind. Like the wind was like, I had my bike in the air. I was like, shit, what am I going to do? And so I had to get a lift down. So then I had to like obviously scratch from it. But even like that experience, I'm so grateful that I did it, because I'd always been so scared of genuinely like being on my own anywhere. And that had started off in Sheffield at like 8 o'clock at night. And then that first day I rode up to Kielder on the Scottish border. Go on, Emily.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to say something about failing and not finishing races, but please continue.
Oh, sure. And so yeah, so I'd gone up there in the first day. Second day, it was just chucking it down all day. And like most of the time, I probably would have just bailed if it was really horrific and cold weather. But I carried on. I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And then I got up there, but even just like knowing that it was the night riding that really terrified me, like being on my own in the dark. And I did it, and I was like, even though I didn't finish it, I wasn't upset that I hadn't done it. I was just like, you know what? I did it through the night. I'll just do it next year. So it really gave me confidence. Even though I didn't finish it, it gave me so much more confidence. I was like, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Emily's picked up on the point about starting and failing, and so we'll come to that, because that's also what I picked up on. But cycling in the dark, what is it that you're scared of? Because if I ever cycle in the dark, I have no rational fears. I'm not scared of getting attacked by someone. I'm scared of like ghosts, which I don't even believe in. But I just get this sense of like scary things and noises. And
I genuinely think as a kid, you kind of like, it's built into you, like get home before dark almost.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think because you can't see as much, and every little noise seems like, oh my god, what was that? What's that?
Yeah, definitely an axe murderer. It's got to be.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I actually think that's the best part of long distance riding, is the night riding, because it's just so quiet, and I love it. I think that's my favorite part about it now.
You push on through. So Emily, go on, expand on that point about not always succeeding.
When Katie was talking, it reminded me of the first time I entered the Transcontinental, and I didn't finish because I messed up. I wasn't very experienced, and I overdid it, and I ended up in hospital, and it was completely my own fault. But I came home feeling on top of the world, and I couldn't have predicted that this would happen. If you told me before the race I was going to fail, it would have felt like a disaster. And since then, I've honestly felt better about races that I have not completed than I have about races that I have completed and won, which is something you just won't know until it happens to you. Like, you would never assume it would be that way. But I seem to learn a lot more from those experiences. And sometimes I think, you've gone to your very utmost and then a bit beyond. So, things have gone wrong, but you realise just how much you're capable of before that, that bit more. I don't know. I think there's quite a lot to say about failure. I mean, the obvious thing is you learn a lot from it, but I think being afraid of it is often unnecessary, because actually it feels okay.
Yeah. As we discussed, it's much scarier things out there to genuinely be scared of. This is a great topic, actually. Let's keep on it for a little bit, because you're all sort of nodding along that seem to have had similar experiences. So if you want to put a hand up, and someone who else wants to go in with this concept of how it's not so bad to fail, go on, V.
Anna, you'll remember my experience. it was the last day of the transcontinental. I was 10 miles from the finish line, and it was night time, and there were dogs. So in Eastern Europe, there's quite a lot of dogs that chase you. I'm scared of dogs now. I was by the end of it.
This, can I just say, this is a rational fear. You should be scared of packs of wild dogs.
Yeah, but it was weird actually, like the fear. I don't know what it was, but I was on the petrol. I'd managed to make kind of however many days and kind of deal with it however I did. And I was literally 10 miles from the end, and I sat there and I was paralyzed with fear. And it was the same as you, Emily. It wasn't like fear that I've experienced. It was primal fear that I couldn't move. And I just thought I'd have to stay there and possibly not even finish. I was like, I couldn't see past it. And I sat there for about an hour and a half. I think I messaged you, Anna. I was just, I don't know how I can finish it. And it wasn't until I sat, I kind of went through it and then started to unpick what I was scared of that I could see how to get past it. But that fear, when it hit me, was just, there was no way past it. I couldn't see, I wasn't going to finish it because I was so scared of these dogs howling in the distance. And by the end of it, I crept up the hill with my hand over my front lights to try and avoid them. But it was fine, and I made that, and I was so, to get past that fear is probably one of the best experience I've ever had it, because I just assumed I wouldn't be able to.
So more important than finishing or results or anything like that was your own personal conquering of your own fear. Yeah, Emily?
I just have one more thing to say about fear. All of the things I've done that I was afraid of have always turned out to be nowhere near as bad as I thought. Yeah. And now that I've done enough of them, my relationship with fear has changed a bit. I still feel afraid of things quite a lot, more than I would expect. But I also, when I feel scared of something, I also feel this sort of anticipation that means I'm about to overcome this boundary. And once I've done this, I'll feel great. So if you do that enough, you do start to manage it a bit better.
That's really good, because I come more from a mountain bike background. So when I get scared, it's more about doing a jump or a really sort of dangerous small section on a mountain bike trail. And I'm not scared if I'm not about to do it. If a jump is so massive that I'm not going to do it, it doesn't scare me. But you've hit the nail on the head there. It's when you know that you're about to push on through that barrier. You know, you're at that point now that you're going to push on through. That's when the fear really kicks in, because you almost end up having two voices inside of you. One that's saying go for it, and the other one that's like, oh no, you're going to go for it, aren't you? So yeah, that's really good. I'm just going to get in some of the comments here, because Tess, she said that Catherine's adventure sounded perfect about switching off from technology, because getting away from it all is so healthy these days, and it can be really, really, really difficult. And Samantha, she's not the fittest and definitely not the fastest, but hopefully this panel has showed you that that's not what it's all about at the moment. And she's just off cycling to the beach tomorrow, setting off to go around West Cornwall, camping solo for a few days at the end of term. Freedom, slow but long miles, beautiful views, with crazy packed up panniers, just like Yuvi. Yes, Catherine.
Can I just add to what Tess said? We did a little experiment last week. I was lucky to go on a trip with work with Cycling UK, recceing a new route that's going to be released in August called the King Alfred's Way in the southeast, which was amazing. And there were 5 of us, including 2 of the guys from Pania CC, who you might have heard of. And we did this little social experiment where we said, no phones, unless you're taking photographs, no Instagram, Facebook, whatever. We're allowed to check our emails in the evening because life does go on, unfortunately. And then we're all sort of doing our own write-ups or Instagram stories or whatever you like after the trip. And I would really recommend it. I thought it was really wonderful because we were so much more immersed in the actual trip and in, getting to our campsite and talking to each other rather than trying to share exactly what we were doing in the moment with our friends. So if people are interested in that, you don't have to lose your phone completely to have a digital cutoff.
Yeah, that's really good. And so going back, we've just shared some of the most epic things that we've done. That link down there, by the way, is the King Alfred's Way that Catherine was just recceing last week. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Some big news about an amazing long distance trail coming up very soon, past the Stonehenge, which is pretty sweet. So like I said, you guys have talked the talk. You've done it now. You've got the experience, but you had to start somewhere. And we've touched on a little bit about how some of you started. What advice do you wish that you could go back and give to yourself that you now know, tips or advice or psychology that you wish that you could tell yourself back then when you were starting? Who wants to kick this one off?
Okay, I'll go. I would always say, learn how to fix anything that goes wrong on your bike. So know that, like, basic mechanics, because that was one of the fears that I had. I know that a lot of other women have the fear of, like, oh, well, what if I get a flat? What if I snap my chain? So, like, teach yourself, learn how. There's so many tutorials on YouTube as well, of how to actually fix things if something goes wrong, if you're in the middle of nowhere on your own, because I think that can be a legitimate fear. So if you kind of eliminate that, then that's like a huge
that's empowering as well, isn't it? You know, you give yourself the ability to do what you need to do.
Definitely. And then also, like, with routes and stuff, I was always a bit worried that I'd get lost, so for me it was just about learning how to, like, map out a route, figure out how to get back if I do get lost, and, like, having either, like, because I think, like, 5 years ago when I started, there wasn't really anything like, you know, Strava routing on your phone or Komoot or anything like that. Not when I started, it was like literally Google Maps. But there's so much, like, simpler and easier ways to kind of navigate now. I think that was one of my main worries, I guess, was not knowing where I was going. But now you can find it really easy. So just get used to how to plan routes and how to kind of figure your way back, I guess.
Yeah, cool. And just to highlight some of the work that Cycling UK does based on those points there, we do have a route planner. So anybody who wants to route, I mean, it's more about avoiding traffic and things like that, but it's definitely worth checking out. And we're also running some free basic mechanics classes during the Women's Festival of Cycling as well. So how to fix a puncture, how to do a basic M-check. So you can join a workshop. Find out more about that on the Women's Festival of Cycling webpage. So thanks for bringing those to highlight, Katie. Anybody else? What would you like to have said to yourself before when you were starting, V?
I was just going to add to Katie's point that I think sometimes when you start, sometimes people are all about all the gear. You don't need all the gear. Like, for me, if I thought, oh, I'd need to fix my bike, but I don't have the tools, but there's loads of community projects out there. I know, like, is it London Bike Kitchen in London? I know there's an amazing community project in Camberwell where you can donate spare parts to, so you can fix up a bike. So I think that if you want to spend loads of money, oh my God, the brands will take it, and you can, but there's always, it can be super accessible. So I think when I first started, I was a bit intimidated. I was like, oh, I need these really expensive wheels, and I need these carbon this and this and this, and it just doesn't need to be that way, or it can be that way.
Yeah, it can be that way if you want it to, and once you start to recognise the benefits, I suppose.
Yeah, and what's right for you, you know, like, kind of like, again, bike-wise, you can have a really, really expensive bike, but I definitely wouldn't recommend that for your first bike if it's so light that you don't, it's quite hard to control. So I was quite happy that I kind of started off on kind of an entry-level bike and kind of worked my way up.
Yeah, useful tips there. Katie, were you about to say something? Or did I?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say I can definitely vouch for the bike kitchen. I had my bike from Adelaide when I was in Australia, and it's like the same premise there. You would go along, I think you paid like a couple of dollars just for, you know, being there. But they taught me, I was like, I don't even know how to take my wheel off. How do I even take my tire off? And they were so patient. So if there is like any bike kitchens or any like community projects, they're just so good. And there's never any kind of like snobbery. It is literally just helping you and being really, you know, just being really helpful.
Yeah, and you're also talking about route planning there and maps and things like that, because V, you wanted to say something about Komoot earlier, and Katie in the comments has said that she thinks that maps are her comfort blanket, which is cool. I mean, maps are pretty old school these days, but there's no technology that can go wrong with them at the very least. So V, do you want to expand on your point about what you wanted to say earlier on?
Yeah, I guess everyone will have their favourite for routing, but Komoot's fairly new to the game really in the last few years, and it's free to use. I think you can pay more to download maps and stuff, but it's just great because you can look at the terrain. So you can look at the type of bicycle. So if you're like, oh, I want to make sure, like for me, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to end up on anything really gravelly or something that if I'm going out on my own where I might be scared I'm getting a puncture, and this was definitely for the transcontinental. I was really nervous about ending up on a gravel high road, and I just could imagine myself never coming down from it. Yeah. So it really helped me, because you can look at how long, whether the section's paved or kind of tarmac paved, and actually it gives you good. I've got no relationship to commute, by the way, but it can show you where camping spots are, or just things that I needed that just would make me reassured. So I'll be like, oh, I'm plotting this route, and I know that there's a campsite, or I know there's a petrol station there, and it's just quite user friendly.
Cool. I seem to drop off there for a second. So if I drop off again, we're on the topic of what would you tell yourself when you were starting out? So Emily, back to you about that.
I was thinking about this as everyone else was talking, and I realised what I would tell myself. I would go back to myself when I was maybe 19 and say, start now. Because I always wanted to do this stuff, at the back of my mind. I hadn't admitted it to myself. I remember when I was at university, 2 guys I vaguely knew went and cycled around Iceland. And I felt really, really jealous. But also, that was just not the sort of thing somebody like me would ever be able to do. So I just sort of wished that I was the sort of person who could do that. And then when I first moved to London, I remember the first time I saw a female cycle courier. And again, I wished I was the sort of person who could do that. But I mean, I'm just not that sort of person. I could have started 10 years earlier than I did. I could have had so many more adventures, and I could have made all my stupid mistakes when I was young and stupid. And I wish, I've had a great time the years I've been doing it, but I wish I'd started sooner. And I wish I hadn't been so, not even scared, but just in denial about it. So if you are thinking about doing anything like cycling to work or cycling around the world or whatever, start right now, and you will save yourself a lot of time.
Love it. Brilliant answer to that one. And what about you, Catherine? What do you wish you knew?
Yeah, I've got 2 things. First one's very practical. Always carry a spare Mech hanger.
Yeah. So what is a Mech hanger?
So it's the little piece that connects your rear Mech or your rear derailleur to the frame, and it's designed to snap if your bike falls over on that side, so that it protects both your frame and the rear derailleur. So it's designed to brake, to be fairly, don't know what the engineering term is for that. So designed to brake, yeah. Designed to brake to save your other components, which are much more expensive, essentially. So if, like me, you're taking a photo of your bike in the middle of a tour and it blows over in the wind and snaps, it's good to have a spare one. And the second point is, it's going to sound a bit wishy-washy, but just go easy on yourself. You're learning. Don't be too hard on yourself, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. As I started to learn how to ride a bike, I also developed an eating disorder, and this made fueling on the bike really hard. And touring around France, you have to eat to be able to do these sorts of things. And, I'd gorge myself on pastries and then 5 minutes down the road be throwing it up, which isn't particularly helpful for being able to actually ride and sustain that and be good and healthy the next day. Obviously that's a very extreme example, but make sure you're looking after yourself, you're eating properly and enough, because that's a really common mistake with people that are just starting out. And don't be afraid to have normal food. It's not all about gels and bars and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that one. It's hugely personal, and hopefully it will resonate with some people. So it's again, brave of you, share, and thank you. And anyone in the comments, if you would like to talk about tips and things that you've learned when you've gone out cycling on your own, we'd love to hear from them as well. Hear from you as well. Somebody saying, "Oh, more fan stuff for Emily." Saying that you inspired Julie to ride across France solo, age 23, with absolutely no experience. Although she met a guy on the ferry, so never actually did do it solo. Like we said, the cycling community.
I think that's not me. That's Dervla Murphy.
Oh, wait. What? Where have I got this wrong? Anyway. Somebody inspired.
It's usually Dervla Murphy.
She did this trip, and sometimes it is just about seeing somebody else. Emily, you were saying that you just saw some people riding around, and you thought, I want to be like them. So once you start making it accessible and being those faces, it should have a bit of a snowball effect that more and more people will get into doing things on their own. And it doesn't always have to be about long distance adventures either. I think a lot of the Cycling UK audience are tuning in because they're really just getting into cycling right at the very beginning. They're not looking to do tours across Europe or massive 100 miles adventures, but they might be sat at home thinking, I'd really like to get out by myself, but I'm going to wait for someone to get back. I'm going to organise to go with a friend, or I'm going to organise to go with a club, which is lovely and it can be really, really enjoyable. But what if you just want to go on your own, but it's fear holding you back? Katie?
Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing. I know when I first started, I would always go out with a group, and I'd always I had like a saddlebag for like an 80k ride, like full of stuff, like food, jackets, all that stuff. And I was really scared to do anything on my own. So I guess a way, if people are the same, go and do a Sportie, but do it on your own. So you're kind of around other people, but if you go and do it on your own, that's what I did when I first started trying to do stuff without my friends.
And can I just, okay, what is a Sportie?
So Sportie is an organised bike ride, basically. They vary in distance. But yeah, it's basically you're going to have however many people there, but you kind of, so you are in like a group, but you're not. And so for me, that was like a huge achievement. I think it was about 85k. And it was round Snake Pass. It was quite a hilly one, but that was like such a big achievement for me. I felt I just felt so amazing that I'd done it. Like even though I wasn't on my own, I kind of was on my own. If that makes sense. And maybe that's a way of kind of venturing into doing stuff more on your own.
Yeah, it's a really good idea, actually. Really good. And Emily, what did you want to add there?
I wanted to add also do an Audax, because they're in some ways very similar to Sportives, but the atmosphere
is really far.
Not all of them. No, they have Audax. The shortest ones are 100k. The longest ones are as long as you can go, basically. I did a 300k one yesterday. I would recommend it. It was amazing. But you get a lot of the same things out of them as you would Sportives. I think in some ways I would prefer an Audax, partly because you get really good meal breaks. Like every couple of hours you stop at like a calf or a village hall and have baked beans on toast. And it's perfectly fine to ride it on your own and do your own thing. But there's groups you can kind of fall in with, and people are very friendly. And generally, in my experience, people are never overbearing, but if you needed help, if you had a mechanical or needed advice or anything, they would look after you and take care of you. It's like the ethos is self-sufficiency, but in practice, the atmosphere is very, very friendly and supportive. And also, if you're a woman, and especially if you're a young woman, people are like, oh my God, wow, really excited to have you. Like, we need to be nice to you and keep you here. So
that is very true. And somebody's brought up a fantastic point here. Katie again says, watch out for your personal low time. And actually speaking to lots of people that do lots of solo riding and energy levels go down, I think it hits everybody low points during some of these amazing rides. Is that fair to say? Have you all experienced low points at some point, even though you're doing it because you want to and you love it, so you should be happy?
So many tears in bush shelters, tears in garages, tears in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're the best part. When you think back, I did. A few of us went bikepacking this weekend. We went from Shrewsbury to Dartmoor, which was like 330k, like fully loaded bikes. And it was so cold. We stopped. We had like a couple of a mechanical 2-puncture, and it was so cold. I even started like. I thought I could feel myself start to cry. I was like, you're not crying because it's cold, like get over it. So even that, like, and I'm used to doing this. And it was cold, and I was like, no, stop being Mardy. You just got to get right. So I think everyone cries, don't they?
And does it make you wonder why you do it? What do you tell yourselves in those moments? How do you not give up?
I have the same sort of pattern as Katie, who made the comment. Like in the afternoon, everything just goes terribly. I have a terrible energy dip and I feel tireder and worse. And I start to feel terrible about myself and think, I'm no good. Why am I even here? I don't even like this. I'm no good at it. I don't like bikes. Everybody hates me and all of that. And then I remember, this is a familiar feeling. This always happens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Just keep going. I mean, it happened yesterday on the ride and I genuinely felt like perhaps this ride isn't going to finish well. But I thought, well, I don't know, this has happened so many times. I know that if I just keep going, I will feel better. And then as if by magic, 2 hours later, I actually kind of felt okay again. So it's not only about keeping going, it's also about trying to get used to your own rhythms and remember, okay, hang on, I always feel bad at this time. And, you know, I always feel good at this time. So be aware of both and like have your strategies in place, whatever it is you need. Like for a lot of people, it'll just be eat a bit more or slow down a bit or have some caffeine or have a chat with someone or whatever works.
Yeah, and you're nodding along thoroughly there, V. Any temper tantrums you've had, or how have you got through the...
I've had so many. I've chucked my bike loads of times. I think it's same as with Emily, really, kind of just understanding my highs and my lows. Often it's depending on which way the wind is blowing as well. I'm like, I'm awful, I hate cycling, I'm gonna quit my job in cycling, I'm gonna take up another sport, and then you turn around and get a tailwind. Oh my god, I love cycling. But food, I think, super important. I always seem to struggle on the last section of a ride. Like I think the last 50k, say you're doing a longer one, or that could be relative if you're doing a shorter one, that you think you can just make it home and I'll be fine. And I find often, yeah, when you're not eating or enough or you're not fueled, you can get mega low points.
Mini Microventures is bringing out some bangers during this chat. She's lonely on my first bike tour and cried because someone said bonjour. You've all been there, yeah, Catherine?
That's so relatable. But also one of the best things about touring on your own, because you get to meet some really fascinating people. Yeah. You know, whether it's on the ferry crossing or you've rocked up to a hostel or something, or even trying to have like a weird conversation in half French about bikes with some dude you're riding along with. And they're some of the most memorable parts, I think. And I don't think you get that as much as when you're touring with other people.
I definitely don't. Yeah, I think you definitely, if you're with a group of people, it can become a bit impenetrable on the outside. Whereas if you're on your own, you're almost welcoming more conversation. So it's like you go into it alone, but the chances are you'll end up being a lot more social with it anyway. And what about just like little rides near the house? So, you know, you don't need that much packing, you don't need that much planning, but just motivating yourselves to get out the door, especially when you're before you really did any of the long distance stuff. Maybe when you might have thought, oh, I'm going to want to do a long distance challenge. I'm the only one who can get myself to do this. I'm the only one that can train, which will mean some regular local rides by myself. How do you sort of motivate yourself just to go and do it if there's no one else to team up with? Anyone? Catherine?
I quite like the exploration vibe. This is more of a recent thing, actually. During lockdown in Bristol, so we were allowed to ride once a day. And I'm not really motivated by speed or distance so much anymore. But if I can go and ride in a place that I've never seen before, and experience this new bit of byway or lane or something, then that actually motivates me. And it's almost like I'm sort of like checking off this mental map around Bristol where I live. So that could be one idea.
Nice. We're keeping it new. Variety is the spice of life. Anyone else, they got anything they want to say about that? Cool. We're going to start slowly wrapping this up, giving you a chance to get expressive, although you have all actually been very expressive so far. So I don't think anyone's going to be holding back here. But why do you like riding by yourself? Why do you do it? So just get as descriptive as you possibly want to be here. You can sing, you can express yourself with dance, I don't care. But just each personally tell us what it is about cycling alone for you that ticks the boxes.
For me, I like it on my own as part excuse me, as part of the adventure. So kind of like you don't have to answer to anyone else. So it's your adventure and you stop when you want to do it. So you're completely in control, and just time to unjuggle my brain and just process things. So just time on the bike, time with my head, and just time to see things on my own, really. Time,
like it. Emily?
I was going to say half of that. I would expand on it and say freedom. I mean, when you're riding on your own, you're in control. You're also free to do absolutely whatever you want. Like if you are feeling frisky and you want to do a 200-mile day, you can go ahead and do it, and you don't have your riding buddy saying, hang on a minute. Or if you're feeling exhausted and lazy and you think you might cut it down to maybe a 50k day, that's also absolutely fine. You can just stop and have ice cream and no one cares because you're the boss. And yeah, the headspace, like I notice when I've spent a day on the bike, my mental health is better. When I've spent a week on the bike, it's even better. If I've spent 3 months, it's like I've been meditating on a mountain. That's, I think, like, other people are great and riding with other people is great, but you don't get that so much. And then I think one really important thing is that you're much more open to the world, and the world is more open to you when you're on your own. So when you're with someone else, yes, you do have someone to say, hey, look at that, when you see something, but also your experiences are kind of modulated through somebody else's presence and sharing it with them, and that sort of frames it. But also the people you meet along the way, you're not going to connect with them as much if you're with another person or some people, because, you know, locals wherever you are will look at a pair of cyclists and think, oh, they're probably okay, they can look after each other, they might not want to be bothered, they're a unit, you know, we'll be nice to them. But if they see a person on their own, if you're female, they tend to think you're in terrible danger, and so they'll sort of be like, come to my house, you know, have some food, meet my family. And this is great. Like the perception of lone females as vulnerable has worked really well for me over the years. And on the rare occasions where I have teamed up with another cyclist, that instantly changes. Like just suddenly the world is at more of a distance. And I feel safer on my own, because I know what's what on my own. Having another person, they're a bit of an unknown quantity. If you get into trouble somewhere, another person isn't necessarily going to help unless they happen to be like a member of the SAS or a trained bike mechanic. They're not always that useful. It's just the psychological kind of help. I don't know. I've talked too much, but I just
tough act to follow, that one, Catherine.
Yeah, it is always.
Sorry.
I think empowerment and independence, like I love it at the end of A to B rides where you're not necessarily doing a loop and you zoom out on the map and you string all your rides together and you're like, wow, I've just ridden from there to there completely under my own power, using, you know, my own steam and my own bike mechanic knowledge and everything, knowing that you can do that totally yourself. It's amazing, and maybe something that we don't get so much of an opportunity to do in like normal life so much.
Excellent. Beautiful. And finally, last but not least, Katie.
I mean, pretty much basically what everyone else has said, but I think for me it's like having that like independence and stuff, and I think that crosses over, like you were saying, Catherine, like into like other areas. It's like, oh, I can do this on my own. If I can do that on my own, I can ride there and be self-sufficient. I can, you know, do this other specific thing in another area of my life, or just, yeah, I guess it is as well the freedom of it as well. Just, I don't know, there's something, it's not like anything else, is it? There's nothing else that you can compare it to, but I think I just like being out on my own just because it makes me feel more independent and just sort things out on my own, I guess.
Lovely. Cool. All right. Well, we've just got a couple more minutes to go. And the way I like to end these, is so that the audience know that we've been listening to them as well, is for you to pick out, so the guests here, to pick out a question or a comment from the audience that you feel that you just particularly you'd like to highlight, or maybe there's a question there that you feel that hasn't been answered. So it'd be really nice for everybody to know that you guys can include, well, everybody's included in this. So if you just give you a couple of seconds to go through the comments, I'm going to start by picking out the comment from, where were you? Oh, I literally just had it there. Sharat. So you wanted to talk about how to encourage more communities from BAME to take up cycling where there is very little support and resources. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is like something that Cycling UK do spend a lot of time and effort into, and we want to be part of that change. On the 29th of July, we've got a panel discussion particularly on this topic. So make sure you do tune into that one there. We'd love to hear from you as well. If you've got any ideas yourself, please do let us know during that panel discussion. So back to going solo and the audience comments. V, have you picked something out?
Oh, sorry, I haven't. I have to run. I've got another.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah.
I'm so rude.
You did say that. So go on, off you go. We've loved having you.
Any questions? Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry to be so rude.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. Okay then, Emily. So
I'm still looking through questions. I'm actually just really enjoying hearing about like all the comments about everybody else's rides, and actually I think that might be sort of the point I have to make, that one thing we've not really touched upon, but what you and V were saying about when she was doing the transcontinental and having the really tough times and you were on the other end of a phone. Knowing that you're not actually alone in this is one of the best things about it. And now everybody who's part of this conversation and all the people in the comments, we are all cycling weirdos together. And we all know that when we get next go through our low patches, that this is a thing that so many other people have experienced and can commiserate over. And having a community or a gang like that, having people you can text or tweet or whatever when the going gets tough, is not only wonderful, but I think for a lot of people that is really, really what helps us through. And also people just afterwards, you can say, I rode 100 miles, I got 2 punctures, I had some cake. And they won't just go, oh, okay. They'll be like, yes, oh my God, isn't it great when that happens? Like, we all need that.
When the cake happens, not the punctures.
Yeah.
Amazing, love that. Thank you. Catherine, did you pick anything out there?
Yeah, I can't find it just now, but there was one where we were asking people for their advice based on their experiences, and somebody had written, always pick up some food or eat when you see a shop that's open. And I was like, yes, been there. Also, always fill up your water bottles when there's a tap. Always use a public toilet when you find one. There you go. Yeah, Julie. Very good. Very good advice.
And somebody just above that has also commented saying you eat normal foods, not just energy gels. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Some nods here.
Especially for long distances, because if you're cycling for days on end, like, you need real food or your stomach will do all sorts of unpleasant things.
Not just your stomach.
A friend did the attack and he'd not been very well, and he ate, I think he had like 20 gels or something. He couldn't stomach anything else. He was not well by the end of it. Got worse. 20 gels over the attack. 20 gels. Like.
And did he just do it because he thought that's what you were supposed to do?
No, he'd been really ill beforehand. That was the only thing he thought he could stomach. But by the finish line, he was like,
yeah, I need some salad.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you? Did you pick out a comment there or a question?
So Mini Micro Adventure said, I told someone I was going to ride 100k, and they told me I couldn't do it. Like that, I remember when I first got my road bike, I'd probably only had it a week, and there was a 5k climb. It's Norton Summit in Adelaide. I don't know whether people know it. And I was telling someone there who wasn't a cyclist, I'm going to try and get up this climb. And they were like, oh, it's really steep. You'll never get up it. And I was just like, really? But the guy who got me into cycling said, you'll be fine. Just give it a go. And I did it, but it took me about 2 hours. It's probably 5k, like literally 2 hours to get up it. And I remember her driving up to see if I was okay. And I was like 3/4 way up, and she's like, do you want a lift? And I was like, I do not want a lift. I'm not getting a lift. But it's like, that's the thing. And it's people that aren't into cycling don't think these things are possible. Whereas if you surround yourself with people that are doing these things, anything seems possible. So just don't let other people and their perceptions of what you can and can't do put you off doing something that you do want to do.
Hell yeah, that is a brilliant note to finish on. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been wonderful, inspiring, enjoyable, all the things. I hope the audience have managed to get some tips out of it, as well as just some inspiration, and we'd love to hear from you as you share your own solo journeys going on. Women's Festival of Cycling, got 2.5 weeks left of it, so still jam-packed with some mechanics events, some more advice events, and also in the link down there, so you go and check it out. And it's all put on by charity, so Cycling UK is actually a charity. So if you want to join us, donate, you can be very welcome. That's what helps us be able to put on this sort of stuff for free. And if you want to become a member, then you receive loads of great benefits as well, including insurance and discounts and loads of bike stuff. So great. And on that note, we've overrun of time. So Emily, Catherine, Katie, and V, who's just left us, thank you so much. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.